cancel the policy before she wakes up. If she wakes up. That was the sentence nurse Patrice Hollis heard at 2:47 in the morning, standing 6 feet from the vending machine on the 4th floor of Ridgemont General, and it was the sentence she would carry home with her and set on her kitchen counter like a thing she couldn't throw away and couldn't quite hold. The voice belonged to a man named Celine Calloway, 32 years old, former college quarterback who still walked like the hallway owed him something. He was leaning against the wall outside room 412, with his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in the low, clipped tone of someone who believed volume was the only thing that separated private from public. He was wrong. Patrice had been a labor and delivery nurse for 11 years. She had heard many things in hallways. She had heard fathers weep. She had heard grandmothers pray in 4 different languages. She had once heard a 19-year-old boy whisper to his girlfriend through a closed door that he was scared and that he loved her, and that he didn't care if it was a boy or a girl as long as she was okay. That one she kept too, but in a different place. This one she kept in the place where the body stores things it needs to act on later. Inside room 412, a woman named Celine Calloway was dying. Not in the metaphorical way people describe bad days. In the specific, clinical way that involves a fetamaternal hemorrhage, identified 40 minutes earlier, and a blood pressure that had been falling since midnight in the slow, irreversible pattern that means the body has started making decisions the medical team has not authorized. Celine was 28. She taught 3rd grade at Hooper Elementary. She had been admitted at 10:15 p.m., 37 weeks pregnant, after calling her own mother from the bathroom floor to say something was wrong. Her mother, who lived in Delaware and could not get a flight until morning, had called 911 from 400 miles away. Troy had arrived at the hospital at 11:40, an hour and 25 minutes after his wife. He told the intake nurse he had been at a work dinner. The intake nurse noted this without expression. Dr. Amara Osei had been on shift since 6 p.m. She was 36 years old, fellowship trained in maternal fetal medicine, and she had a way of moving through a room that reorganized everything in it around the patient. She did not perform for families. She did not soften language past the point of accuracy. She worked and she watched, and when she spoke, people understood that the words had been weighed before they were released. At 11:50, she had stepped into the hallway to update the family. The family at that point was Troy and a woman introduced as his sister Brielle. Brielle was 26. She had highlighted hair and a silk camisole visible under her coat, and the particular energy of someone who was not in the right building, but had decided to stay anyway. She stood close enough to Troy that their shoulders touched. Standing behind them both, in a gray wool coat and pearl stud earrings, was Troy's mother, Constance Calloway. She had arrived at 11:35, 5 minutes before her son, which Patrice noted. Constance had the bearing of a woman who organized fundraisers and sat on boards and had never in her life been interrupted mid-sentence. She had asked where Celine's room was, walked to the door, looked through the small window and said, "She looks awful." Then she had taken a seat in the hallway and placed her handbag on the chair beside her as if reserving it. Dr. Osei had given the update. Celine's condition was critical. The hemorrhage was not responding to intervention as hoped. The team was preparing for an emergency cesarean within the hour if stabilization was not achieved. Troy had nodded. Constance had asked about the baby. Brielle had looked at the floor. Dr. Osei had gone back inside. At 1:15 a.m. the cesarean was performed. At 1:22 a girl was delivered, 5 pounds 2 ounces, breathing. She was taken immediately to the neonatal unit. At 1:24, things changed. The second ultrasound image, the one taken at 33 weeks, had shown what the team believed was a shadow artifact behind the placenta, the kind of image that gets flagged and noted and rechecked. Dr. Osei had rechecked it. At 35 weeks, she had confirmed it. She had been monitoring both fetuses since then, adjusting her delivery plan around the presence of a smaller twin positioned in a way that made detection difficult on earlier scans. At 1:26, the second baby was delivered, a girl, 4 pounds 6 ounces, smaller, quieter, breathing with assistance, taken to the NICU beside her sister. At 1:31, Celine Calloway's heart stopped. Dr. Osei did not leave the room. She called the code. She started compressions. The crash team was there in under 90 seconds. For the next 22 minutes, the room operated at the specific silent frequency of people working at the limit of what medicine can do. No one spoke except to call numbers. No one paused except to switch positions. At 1:53, the monitor showed a rhythm. At 1:54, the rhythm held. At 1:55, Dr. O.C. stepped back from the table and placed both hands flat on the instrument cart and stood very still for 10 seconds. Nobody commented on this. Everyone understood it. Celine was alive. Both babies were alive. None of this had been guaranteed 30 seconds earlier. In the hallway, during those 22 minutes, 3 people had waited in a way that Patrice would describe later as coordinated. Not the frantic, uncoordinated waiting of people in crisis. Something else. Something that looked like waiting but felt like watching. Troy had been on his phone, not pacing, not sitting. Standing in the middle of the corridor, scrolling, occasionally typing. Patrice had passed him twice. Both times he had looked up with the expression of someone being interrupted during something more important. Constance had been seated, legs crossed, handbag in her lap. She had taken a compact mirror from her purse at one point and checked her reflection and put it back. At 1:40, she had asked Patrice for coffee. Not asked, informed. "I'll take a coffee, black." Like Patrice was the waitstaff at a fundraiser. Brielle had been standing near the window at the end of the corridor, arms crossed, looking out at the parking lot. She had not asked a single question about Celine. She had asked Troy, once, whether it would be much longer. At 2:00, Dr. O.C. came through the door. She looked at the 3 of them. She had delivered news to families 900 times. She knew what people's faces did. She knew the difference between grief that arrives and grief that is performed. "Celine is alive," she said. Her heart stopped during the procedure and was restarted. "She is unconscious and in critical condition." Troy's face moved. It was not the right movement. It was close. The shape was right, the angle was right. The jaw tightened at the right moment, and the breath was released on the right beat. But the eyes did something separate from the rest, something that landed a half-second behind the mouth, and Patrice saw it. Dr. O.C. saw it. Neither of them said anything. "The baby?" Constance asked. "There are 2, Dr. O.C. said. The hallway changed. It was the kind of change that doesn't involve sound or motion. Something in the air rearranged itself, the way it does when information enters a space and meets the wrong expectations. 2? Troy said. "Twins, both girls, both in the NICU, both stable." Constance's hand went to her pearl earring and stayed there. Brielle looked at Troy. Troy did not look at Brielle. "I want to be clear," Dr. O.C. said, in the voice she used when she wanted words to function as documentation. "Your wife is alive. Your daughters are alive. All 3 of them will require significant medical care in the coming days and weeks. I will need the family to be present and available." She said wife the way certain words are said when they are doing more than one job. She said family the same way. She went back inside. At 2:47, Patrice heard Troy on the phone. She had been restocking the supply cart across from the vending machine. The conversation was already underway when she arrived. "Cancel the policy before she wakes up. If she wakes up." Pause. "No. The joint one. The one with the survivor clause." Pause. "Because if there's 2 of them now, the math is different. I need to talk to Kendrick before she talks to anyone." Kendrick, Patrice would learn later, was Troy's attorney. Patrice stood very still. She held a box of IV tubing in both hands, and she listened, and she did not pretend she wasn't listening. She was not the kind of nurse who pretended. "Tell Mom to stop calling. She needs to go home. Brielle too. It looks bad if they're both here." Pause. "I know what I said. I'm saying something different now." He hung up. He looked at his phone. He put it in his pocket. He pulled it out again and typed something and put it back. Then he walked to the door of room 412 and looked through the window at his wife, unconscious, intubated, her chest rising and falling with the rhythm of a ventilator, and he stood there for exactly 4 seconds before turning and walking toward the elevator. Patrice counted the seconds. She would remember them. She set the IV tubing down. She walked to the nurse's station. She sat and she opened a blank progress note and she began typing what she had heard, word for word, time-stamped, with the date and her credentials after her name. Then she saved it and locked the screen and went to room 412 and stood in the doorway. Celine Calloway, 28 years old. 3rd grade teacher, Hooper Elementary. Dark curly hair on the pillow. Oxygen mask. 2 daughters upstairs she had not met yet. Patrice stood there for a moment longer than necessary. Then she went upstairs to the NICU. She found the charge nurse. She made a request. The charge nurse looked at her, started to ask something, then stopped and nodded. The request was honored without requiring a full explanation. Some requests carry their own context. Celine woke 31 hours later. The first thing she saw was the ceiling. The second thing she saw was the light from the window, pale and flat, the kind of light that belongs to late morning in a hospital where time doesn't function normally. The third thing she saw was Dr. Osi, not standing, sitting in the vinyl chair beside the bed with a paper cup of tea on the tray table and her white coat draped over the back of the chair and her hands folded in her lap, not typing, not checking a chart, sitting. Later Celine would say that was the moment she knew two things, that something terrible had happened and that she had survived it. Because doctors who sit down have already decided to stay, and doctors who stay are not delivering the worst news. They are delivering the complicated kind, the kind that takes time. There are some things I need to tell you, Dr. Osi said. I'm going to tell you all of it. I'm going to be here the entire time. She told Celine about the hemorrhage, about the cesarean, about the cardiac arrest that lasted 22 minutes. She told in order, clearly, without rushing and without softening the parts that did not benefit from softness. Then she told her about the twins. Celine's face did something that Patrice, who had come to the doorway and was standing just outside it, would think about for a long time afterward. It was not surprise. It was not joy. It was something older than both, something that lived underneath language. The face of a person receiving information that their body already knew but their mind had not been told. 2, Celine said. 2 girls. Both in the NICU. Both doing well. Twin A is 5 pounds 2 ounces. Twin B is 4 pounds 6 ounces. They've been asking about you. Dr. Osi said this last part with the faintest shift at the corner of her mouth. Not quite a smile. The thing that sits next to a smile and does the same work more quietly. They don't know me yet, Celine whispered. They will. Celine was quiet for a long time. The monitor beeped its steady rhythm. The light from the window shifted by a degree. Where is Troy? She asked. She asked it the way people ask questions when the answer is already forming in the back of their throat, like something they've swallowed and can't quite get down. Dr. Osi was careful. She did not tell Celine everything. She told her what she needed in the order she needed it. She told her that Troy had been present at the hospital, that he had been informed of her condition and the twins' condition, that he had left shortly afterward and had not returned. She did not tell her about the phone call. Patrice did. Not immediately. Not that day. On the second day, when Celine was sitting up and eating ice chips and looking stronger in the specific way that people look stronger when they have decided to pay attention, Patrice came in to check vitals. She checked the IV. She checked the monitor. She adjusted the pillow. Then she stood at the side of the bed and said, "Mrs. Calloway, there's something I heard that I think you should know about," she told her, word for word. Time-stamped, the policy, the survivor clause, the math being different. The instruction to send his mother and Brielle home because it looked bad if they were both there. Celine listened without interrupting. Her face went still in the particular way that faces go still when the person behind them is not processing emotion, but reorganizing their entire understanding of the architecture they have been living inside. When Patrice finished, Celine said, "How long have you been a nurse?" 11 years. "Have you ever had to do something like this before? Tell someone something like that?" "No," Patrice said. "I have not." Celine looked at the window, then at the monitor, then at her own hands on the blanket. "Thank you," she said. "I need a phone, and I need to talk to my mother, and then I need a lawyer. In that order." "I can help with the first 2, Patrice said. "Dr. Osi can help with the third." Celine's mother, Beverly Ashford, arrived from Delaware on day 2 at 4:15 p.m. She was 57 years old, and she came through the door of room 412, carrying a bag from the airport shop, and wearing sneakers she had clearly put on in a hurry because they were on the wrong feet. She did not notice this until the next morning. She did not care when she did. She stood at Celine's bedside and held her daughter's face in both hands, and looked at her for a long time without speaking. Then she said, "I called 911 from my living room floor, and I have not stopped shaking since." "I'm here, Mom. I know you are, I can see you are. Beverly went to the NICU that evening with Celine in a wheelchair. Patrice pushed the chair. Dr. Osi had arranged it. The twins were in adjacent isolates under the blue-white NICU light that makes everything look both fragile and permanent at the same time. Twin A was asleep. Twin B was awake, eyes open, looking at nothing and everything in the way newborns do when they are cataloging a world they haven't decided about yet. Celine reached into the isolette and placed one finger against Twin B's palm. The baby's hand closed around it immediately, reflexively, with the grip of someone who does not yet know what holding means but does it anyway. Celine cried, not loudly, the quiet kind that doesn't make sound because the body is using all its energy to stay upright. Beverly stood behind the wheelchair with both hands on her daughter's shoulders and said nothing because there was nothing to say that the room wasn't already saying by itself. What are you going to name them? Patrice asked from the doorway. She asked it gently. She asked it because she knew that sometimes a practical question is the kindest thing you can offer someone who is drowning in large ones. Celine wiped her eyes. She looked at Twin A sleeping. She looked at Twin B, gripping her finger. June, she said. And Iris, family names? No, Celine said. Just names that sound like they belong to people who show up. The lawyer came on day 3. Her name was Tanisha Woodard. She was 41 years old and she came recommended by a social worker at Ridgemont General who had received a quiet call from Dr. Osi the day before. Tanisha had handled 16 divorce cases involving financial misconduct in the previous year. She carried a brown leather portfolio and a yellow legal pad. And she sat in the chair beside Celine's bed, and she listened for 45 minutes without writing anything down. Then she started writing. The insurance policy, Tanisha said. Do you know the details? Troy set it up 18 months ago. $2 million. Joint life policy with a survivor benefit clause. He told me it was for the baby. And the house? His name is on the deed. He refinanced in October. I signed papers he told me were routine. I didn't read them carefully. Tanisha wrote this down. She did not change expression. She had heard variations of this sentence in 11 of her 16 cases. The woman at the hospital, Tanisha said. The one introduced as his sister, Brielle. How long have you known? Celine looked at her hands. I didn't know. I suspected. Since August. She called his phone once when he was in the shower and I saw the name and the way the messages were formatted. I didn't open them. Pause. I was 7 months pregnant. I didn't want to know. Do you want to know now? I want to know everything now. Tanisha nodded. She made a note. She looked at Celine the way people look at someone who has just said the thing they needed to hear. I'll file a petition for emergency protective order and temporary custody by end of business tomorrow. I'll subpoena the insurance records, the refinancing documents, and the phone records. I'll request a forensic accountant. If what the nurse heard matches what the records show, this is not just divorce. This is fraud. What do I need to do? Right now? Get stronger. Hold your daughters. Let me work. Celine nodded. I can do that. Troy came on day 4. He came at 2 in the afternoon. He brought flowers, not gas station flowers, real ones. Peonies and white roses wrapped in craft paper, the way expensive flowers come, tied with twine. The kind of arrangement that costs $60 and is designed to communicate a feeling the buyer does not actually have. He walked into room 412 with the flowers in one hand and his phone in the other, and he looked at Celine in the bed and at the 2 bassinets beside the window. Because the twins had been moved from NICU to Celine's room that morning, both strong enough now, both gaining weight, and he said her name. Celine. He said it with the quality of a man who had been rehearsing in the car. The right amount of softness. The right pause before and after. Performed sincerity, which is different from sincerity in ways that are invisible to the person performing it and completely visible to everyone else. Celine looked at him. Sit down, Troy. He sat. He placed the flowers on the tray table. He looked at the bassinets. He looked at Celine. He opened his mouth. Don't, she said. I'm going to talk. You're going to listen. And then you're going to leave. He closed his mouth. Something moved behind his eyes. Calculation, maybe. Recalibration. The look of a man running new numbers. Celine told him what she knew. She told him about the phone call at 2:47 a.m. She told him she knew about the insurance policy and the survivor clause. She told him she knew about the refinance deed and the papers she had signed without reading. She told him she knew about Brielle. who was not his sister, who had been at the hospital while Celine's heart was stopped, who had asked Troy whether it would be much longer. She said all of this in a voice that was calm and clear and completely unfamiliar to Troy, because Troy had married a woman who avoided conflict, who signed papers without reading them, who saw a name on a phone and chose not to open the messages, who was 7 months pregnant and decided she didn't want to know. That woman had died on a table at 1:31 a.m. The woman sitting in this bed was someone else. Not louder, not angrier, something more specific than that. Someone who had been given the rare clarity that comes only from having everything taken away and then returned. Troy spoke. Some of what he said were apologies. They were the kind of apologies that begin with, "I'm sorry you feel," instead of "I'm sorry I did." Celine let him finish each one and did not respond to any of them. Some of what he said were explanations. Betrayal was a mistake. The insurance was a misunderstanding. The refinancing was standard financial planning. He had panicked in the hallway. He didn't mean what he said on the phone. People say things under stress. "You said cancel the policy before she wakes up," Celine said. "That is not stress, that is a plan." Troy's jaw tightened. For the first time since he sat down, the performance slipped. Just for a moment. Just long enough for Celine to see what was behind it. "My lawyer filed a petition this morning," Celine said. "Emergency protective order, temporary sole custody of June and Iris, forensic audit of all joint accounts, subpoena of the insurance records and your phone records." She watched his face. "You can leave the flowers," she said, "and the ring if you want, and the next time you come to this hospital, it will be with your attorney." Troy left. He did not take the flowers. He did not leave the ring. He walked out of room 412 and down the hallway and into the elevator, and Patrice, who was charting at the station directly opposite the door, watched him go. His shoulders were different. The quarterback walk was gone. Something had been removed from the architecture of him that he would not be able to rebuild, because it had been built on the assumption that certain people would always be too afraid to look directly at him. And one of those people had just looked directly at him and spoken clearly and not blinked. Patrice watched until the elevator doors closed. Then she went to room 412. Celine was sitting in bed. The flowers were on the tray table. June was sleeping in the left bassinet. Iris was awake in the right one, studying, focused from the window with the intense, focused attention of a person who has just arrived somewhere important. Notes. Celine looked at Patrice. "He didn't cry," Celine said. "Not once." Patrice nodded. "He didn't ask their names." Patrice nodded again. Celine looked at her daughters. She looked at them for a long time. The monitor beeped. The light moved. "I'm going to move the flowers to the windowsill," she said. "They're still flowers. They didn't do anything wrong." She moved them. She arranged them in the light. Then she sat back down and picked up Iris and held her against her chest, and listened to the small, determined sound of her breathing. Dr. Osi stopped by every day for the 9 days Celine was in the hospital. Sometimes it was a full visit, chart review, vitals discussion, recovery plan. Sometimes it was shorter, a stop at the doorway, a question about the night, a glance at the twins. Once, on day 6, when the room was quiet and both babies were sleeping and Beverly had gone to the cafeteria, and the afternoon had settled into the specific stillness of hospitals. In the hours between lunch and dinner, Dr. Osi sat in the chair beside the bed. Not checking a chart, not typing, sitting. "You sat down again," Celine said. "I did. You did that the first day too, when you told me." "Yes." Celine was quiet for a moment. "Did you know, before the delivery, about the twins? I'd been monitoring both them since week 33. Every scan, every appointment. You never told me there might be 2. I told you there was an anomaly on the imaging that I was watching carefully. I told you I had adjusted the delivery plan. I did not want to introduce uncertainty into a pregnancy that already had enough of it." Celine considered this. "You made the right call. I made a call. I'm glad it was the right one." Another silence. Comfortable, the kind that only exists between people who have been through something together that rearranged the normal rules of how strangers relate to each other. "The nurse," Celine said. "Patrice, yes, she told me what she heard in the hallway." Dr. Osi did not look surprised. "I know, did you tell her to?" "No, but I made sure she knew it was safe to." "There's a difference." Celine looked at June, sleeping with her fist curled against her cheek. She looked at Iris, sleeping with her mouth slightly open in the absolute surrender of someone who trusts the world completely because she has not yet been given a reason not to. "I want to ask you something," Celine said. "Go ahead. When you came out into the hallway, when you told them I was alive, Troy and his mother and that woman, what did they look like?" Dr. Osi was quiet for a moment. She chose her words. They looked like people who had been expecting a different outcome. Celine nodded slowly. She did not cry. She had finished crying about Troy Calloway. She had finished that somewhere around day 3, in the specific hour between Tanisha Woodard leaving and Beverly arriving with dinner from the place across the street. And she had set it down the way you set down something heavy that you suddenly realize you've been carrying much longer than the current trip. "I used to think," Celine said, "that the worst thing that could happen to me was losing him. Losing the marriage, being alone with a child." She looked at her daughters. "Now I have 2 children, and the worst thing that happened to me is the best thing that ever could have." Dr. Osi looked at June and Iris. Small, determined, impossibly present. Taking up space in the world the way only people who almost didn't make it can. "They're going to be something," Dr. Osi said. "I know," Celine said. "I think they already are." Celine Calloway was discharged on a Tuesday morning. Beverly drove. The twins were in matching car seats in the back, and Celine sat between them with one hand on each seat, feeling the warmth of them through the fabric. The car pulled out of the hospital lot and into the morning, and the sunlight came through the windshield and hit the rearview mirror and scattered across the ceiling in small, moving shapes that June and Iris both turned their heads to follow, tracking the light with the serious, unblinking attention of people who have decided that this world, whatever it is worth paying attention to. In room 412, Patrice stripped the bed and wiped down the surfaces and restocked the supply cart. She found one of the peonies from Troy's arrangement on the windowsill, fallen behind the curtain. It was still alive. A little bent, but holding on. She picked it up. She looked at it. She put it in a cup of water at the nurse's station, where it lasted another 5 days, which was longer than anyone expected, which is sometimes how it goes. Some hallways go quiet at the wrong moment. Some phone calls get heard by the people who were supposed to be too far away to hear them. Some women die on tables and come back with 2 daughters, and a clarity they did not have before. And some flowers outlast the occasion they were bought for, not because anyone planned it, but because certain things, once they decide to hold on with everything they have.